Jaylen Meyer walked with his collar turned up and his data tablet held close to his chest. The rain slashed sideways through the colony's fractured weather grid, falling in acidic sheets that hissed softly against exposed ducting. The metallic scent of rust mixed with mold and the sour stink of failing insulation. Sector D7, once a residential hub, now sagged under decades of neglect. Lights flickered overhead, casting weak yellow arcs onto flooded grates. Jaylen stepped over a collapsed signage panel and ducked under a broken canopy. His boots clinked against the wet metal walkway, the noise sharp against the otherwise dead silence. He didn't look up often. There wasn't much to see, just more corrosion warnings blinking red on rusted access points and more water pooling near vent shafts. His job wasn't to fix anything. It was to confirm that things were broken, tag them, and walk away. Logistics auditing didn't save lives. It kept databases current. That was enough. The tablet pinged. Oxygen at 71%. Not hazardous, just low. He made a note. Moisture saturation was critical, but still within threshold. Another note. He moved forward. The alleys between infrastructure rows felt thinner now, like the colony itself was folding inward. Then he saw her. Near the base of a vent shaft, tucked between two overflow bins filled with rain-soaked polymer, a figure sat curled in on itself. He knew it was her before his mind even registered the shape. There was no mistaking the posture, knees pulled up tight, shoulders hunched, head down. But more than that, it was the smell. It hit him like a wall. Thick, sour, chemical. Not just unwashed, wrong, like pheromones turned inside out, spoiled and clinging. It wasn't just unpleasant. It was sharp, primal, like something that made your body want to recoil. People called her the smell girl. Jaylen had heard the stories. Everyone had. She wasn't just homeless. She was cursed, ruined by a chemical spill or a bioaccident. No one knew the truth. She had once worked in maintenance, maybe food prep, or maybe she was part alien. The rumors changed, but one thing stayed the same. No one got close. Not the patrols, not the med drones, not even the beggars. She had become part of the structure, like a warning sign that no one read anymore. He'd walked past her before. Last year, maybe. Or earlier. He didn't remember. You weren't supposed to stop. She didn't ask for help. She didn't speak. She just sat there, day after day, like someone who had already stopped counting time. But today he paused. The rain splashed onto his shoulders, soaking through the edges of his hood. His fingers tightened around the tablet. She hadn't moved. Her poncho, or what was left of it, hung off one side of her frame like a torn banner. Her hair was thick with grease and matted dirt, strands clinging to her face. Her feet were bare, pressed flat against the wet steel. She wasn't shivering, just still. He didn't know why he didn't move. Maybe it was the way she didn't look up, not even to flinch. Maybe it was the way the rain didn't seem to touch her anymore, like she had been there so long even the weather ignored her. His throat tightened. He knew this wasn't his job. His badge didn't carry authority. He couldn't fix her condition or undo whatever had happened. But the thought of walking away again felt heavier than it should have. So he spoke. "I can offer you a place to wash." That was all. His voice was low, flat, even, not pleading, not demanding, just offering. She looked up. Her eyes were wide, sharp, calculating, not hopeful, not desperate. Just watching, like she was trying to figure out what angle he had. Her face was covered in dirt, but beneath it, he saw silver marbling along her jaw, like old biotrace scars. Her skin was a pale violet under the grime. Her lips were dry, her expression unreadable. She didn't answer. He waited. Then slowly, without speaking, she stood. She didn't thank him. didn't ask questions. She just followed. He turned and walked toward the stairwell, his boots clicking against the soaked grating. The rain bled through the broken sealant above them. She moved quietly behind him, feet slapping softly against wet metal, never too close, never far. When they reached the entrance to his flat, he keyed in the access code with trembling fingers. The door hissed open. He stepped inside. She followed. He didn't want to leave her alone. As he packed up his tablet and jacket, he glanced back. She was awake now, not moving, but her eyes were open, watching him. He crouched a little, kept his voice soft. "There's food, not good, but hot." She reached for the tray. Her fingers were slow, precise. No shaking, still avoiding contact, but not flinching anymore. He hesitated, then added quietly, "My name's Jaylen. Jaylen Meyer. I work with the Environmental Oversight Bureau. I log corrosion, moisture, oxygen loss, stuff no one cares about unless the ceiling collapses." She didn't answer. Then, finally, one word. "Arena." He looked up. Not a nickname, not a mutter. Just her name, clear and small, placed like an offering in the air between them. He nodded once, said nothing else. Because in that moment, he understood something. She didn't need saving. She just needed not to be walked past again. The door closed behind him with a soft hiss. Jaylen stood still for a moment, tablet tucked under one arm, boots dripping on the concrete landing just outside his flat. The rain had lessened but hadn't stopped, a fine mist now weaving between the buildings like a ghost that refused to leave. His collar was damp. His knees ached from kneeling beside rusted panels all morning. The diagnostics he ran on the western filtration grid had confirmed his suspicion. Overpressure from blocked insulation had ruptured a secondary bypass line. It was a small failure, but small failures never stayed small in places like Zero and Terra. Still, none of that was what kept him standing in the hall. It was her. Inside. Arena. He didn't know what he expected. Maybe silence. Maybe her gone. But when he keyed in the lock and stepped into the flat, he paused at the threshold. She was still there, but the room was different. Organized. The wet towels from last night were drying neatly across the wall rail. The dishes had been cleaned, wiped dry, and stacked. The heater's filter panel had been removed and scrubbed. He could see the faint shine of exposed metal, something he hadn't seen in over a year. The supply bin had been reorganized. She hadn't just stayed. She had moved, occupied, touched. She had made this place feel used. Arena sat on the floor near the heater, same oversized gray shirt, sleeves now rolled to her elbows. Her hair was still damp but combed, the strands lying in soft waves down her back. She didn't look up when he entered, didn't apologize, didn't explain. She just existed. Jaylen stepped inside, shut the door, and leaned against it longer than he needed to. "You didn't have to do that," he said. She looked up, calm. "I know." Silence again. But not heavy, not hostile, just quiet. Like two people learning the shape of each other's silence. "You're not from here," she added. Not a question, a statement. "No," he replied. "I was posted here last cycle. Volunteered." "Why?" He hesitated. No one ever asked that. "I like things quiet," he said. "This place doesn't expect much from you. That suits me." She nodded once. No judgment, just absorbing. He moved to the heater and crouched beside it, letting the warmth hit his legs. She stayed where she was, eyes watching him now. Then, softly, not bitterly, just tired, she said, "They said I'd never smell clean again." Jaylen didn't know how to respond. Her voice had no anger in it. No sadness either. Just fatigue. "Pheromone imbalance?" he guessed. She nodded faintly. "I worked glacial cores. One of the extraction tanks ruptured. Spray exposure. Damaged my skin chemistry. They gave me a leave schedule, said to isolate for 2 weeks, that I'd normalize. I didn't." She paused. "After a month, they cut my placement. No one wanted to sit near me. No one wanted me back." Still, she didn't cry. Jaylen listened. "I was reassigned to psychosocial hazard review. Never heard back. Stipend stopped. Housing lockout came next. By then, I'd stopped trying." She looked around the room, not as a guest, but as someone trying to understand how she'd ended up in a place like this. "This is the first time I've slept indoors in I don't know how long." Jaylen swallowed. "I didn't do anything special." She looked at him then, really looked. "You didn't walk away," she said. "Everyone else did." The heater hummed beside them. Outside, rain tapped softly on the vents. That night, she didn't sleep on the floor. Jaylen offered the cot blanket again, but this time she took it, sat down at the edge of the bed, and said nothing. He lay on the floor. They didn't speak. But in the middle of the night, as the colony creaked under the weight of its own decay, Jaylen felt the blanket slide over him. Folded, placed gently. He didn't move. And for the first time since she stepped into his flat, neither of them was alone. The next morning came slower. Jaylen woke before her. Or maybe she hadn't slept. She was still on the cot, curled against the edge, one arm draped over the blanket, her head pressed gently into the same pillow he had used the night before. He sat near the heater, tea in hand, silent. Irina stirred, eyes opening slowly, no flinch, no tension. She saw him. "You didn't leave," she said. "No," he replied. "Didn't want to." A long pause passed between them. She shifted slightly, sitting up. Her shoulders rose and fell with a deep breath. "Have you ever lived with anyone before?" Jaylen nodded. "A long time ago, before the reassignment program. She was posted off-world. I stayed behind. We lost contact during the collapse of Tier 4. I didn't try to reconnect." "Why not?" He looked at her, not defensive, just honest. "Because she didn't ask me to." Irina watched his face, fingers curling slightly in the blanket. "I used to live with 3 others," she said. "Shared quarters, tight space. We argued about water cycles and heater access. Back then, I thought I hated them." She paused. "After the rupture, no one came to check on me. Not once. I wasn't angry, just surprised." Jaylen swallowed. "Maybe people don't know how to show up for someone who smells wrong," he said. "That's not what I saw," she answered. "What did you see?" he asked. "You weren't asking for help," he added. "You were trying to vanish. Like if you sat still enough, the world would stop noticing you existed." Irina sat up fully now, her posture straighter, her presence more solid. She looked directly at him. "But you noticed." Jaylen didn't look away. "You didn't look dirty," he said. "You looked like someone who used to be proud, who didn't know where to put that pride anymore." That quieted the room. She stood, crossed the space between them in 3 careful steps, then knelt beside him. Close. So close her shoulder brushed his. "If I sat beside you," she asked, "would you pull away?" "No." She stayed there, not touching more, not speaking again. But her breath slowed. Her jaw softened, and her body leaned just enough for him to know she didn't need to be held. She just needed not to be pushed away. The colony's southern sector smelled like burnt rubber and wet steel, the kind of place where moisture collected in silent cracks and power conduits hissed faintly even when nothing was flowing. The mist here didn't fall, it rose, from the ground, from the vents, from the buildings themselves, as if Zero and Terra were slowly exhaling everything it could no longer hold in. Jaylen adjusted the strap on his tablet harness, pulled his hood tighter, and stepped out onto the walkway. The mist clung to him instantly, soaking into the folds of his sleeves and the back of his neck. Behind him, the stairwell door groaned softly and clicked shut. He glanced over his shoulder. She was there. Irina. Wearing one of his regulation jackets now, faded navy, collar pulled high around her jaw. Her pale violet skin peeked through at the wrists, and her white-silver hair was tied loosely behind her head with a black rubber strap she'd found in the supply bin. She moved slower than he did, not because she was weak, but because she was alert. He didn't speak, didn't ask if she was sure. She had followed. That was enough. They walked together into the mist, step by step, not touching, not speaking, but not apart. The southern maintenance route was mostly dead now. Where once had been drone pads and recharging ports, there were now collapsed archways and duct lines tied off with scavenged foam wrap. Jaylen scanned a corroded signal node, and his tablet chirped a delayed ping. Low voltage, oxygen levels steady but spiking under high pressure. He moved to the next relay. Irina stayed beside him, a silent observer. She didn't ask what he was scanning. She watched how he moved, how he knelt to reroute the diagnostics, how his fingers found the pressure lock on a sealed panel like it was second nature. But she didn't just watch. She learned. At the fourth node, when the corrosion readings didn't match the thermal output, Jaylen frowned and stepped back. "Can't find the offset," he murmured, mostly to himself. Irina stepped closer, crouched beside him. "You're reading the wrong relay," she said quietly. "The blue casing's the older grid. Fibers wrapped at the base. They used to color code the insulation failures. That knot right there, that's the patch." Jaylen blinked. "You've worked with this?" "I told you. Glacial harvest, moisture systems, pressure flow, signal lag." He smiled, just slightly. "Of course." She didn't smile back, but something in her posture shifted, a little taller, a little straighter. They worked in silence for another hour. Irina pointed to bad seals. Jaylen rerouted signal trails. He input values. She confirmed pattern drift. They moved like people who had always done this, who knew what it meant to do small, invisible work in a dying place. By the time they reached the last duct line, her sleeves were soaked, her gloves stained with rust, and her hair clung in damp strands to her forehead. Jaylen leaned back against the support beam, wiping his palms on his knees. Irina stood beside him, eyes scanning the final panel. They didn't speak, until she did. "That man, the dock worker we passed earlier." Jaylen glanced at her. "Yeah?" He wrinkled his nose. Jaylen shook his head. "He always does that. I've seen him do it in clean rooms. You don't smell." She looked at him, not with disbelief, just with calculation, like she wanted to believe, but had learned not to. "I don't know if it'll stay this way," she admitted. "The scent, it used to come back. After stress, sleep, heat. I could be fine for a day, then suddenly, not." "Then we'll take it one day at a time," he said. Irina turned to face him fully. "You say that like you mean it." "I do." Another silence passed between them, this one shorter, less sharp. Then she said, "You speak like someone who's lived alone too long." Jaylen exhaled. "I have." They returned to the flat just before dusk. The stairwell was slick with condensation, the walls sweating cold moisture from the temperature shift. Inside, The warmth hit like a gentle pulse. The heater had held steady. Jaylen keyed the lock. Irina stepped in first this time. She moved without hesitation, hung the jacket, wiped her boots, unraveled her hair. Then she reached for the clean cup without asking. He watched from across the room. Something had changed. She didn't say, "I'm staying," but she didn't have to. It was in the way she reached for the towel by habit, the way she adjusted the heater vent without permission, the way she sat not by the door, but near the cot, facing him. This place had become more than a hiding place. It was becoming hers, too. Jaylen moved to the stove, started boiling water. Irina didn't speak, until she did. "Do you want company tomorrow?" she asked. Jaylen paused. He turned. "You mean out there," she said, gesturing toward the outer sector. "Walking, scanning, doing the work." He looked at her, not as a guest, not as a charity, but as someone who had walked beside him, worked beside him, corrected his scan, cleaned his vents. "Yeah," he said. "I'd like that." She didn't smile, but her hands relaxed on the table. Jaylen sat across from her. The tea boiled. The mist clung to the window, and for the first time since the colony began to fall apart, something else had begun to build. Not a rescue, not a romance, a rhythm. And for Irina, that was more than anyone had offered in a long time. The wind cut harder than the rain that morning. Sharp, slanted sheets of cold water hammered the outer plates of the colony like it wanted to peel them loose. The sky above Zero and Terra didn't darken. It simply deepened into a shade that felt older than storm. Buildings leaned, rails creaked, moisture curled along the edges of sealed hatches like cold breath trapped under steel skin. Jaylen tightened his jacket and stepped out into it anyway. Behind him, the stairwell echoed with soft footsteps. Irina followed. No hesitation this time. She wore the same jacket from yesterday, cinched tighter now with a faded gear belt she'd found in the supply box. Her long shirt hung past her thighs, tucked roughly at the waist. Her hair was braided loosely over one shoulder, a damp silver rope against her chest. He looked back once, made sure she was there. She met his eyes, didn't flinch. They walked, through flooded alleys, past broken ventilation towers, beneath dripping conduit arms that sparked faintly when wind touched exposed wiring. The mission today wasn't urgent. It never was. Just another sweep through Outer Maintenance Block 6. Moisture tags, pressure calibrations, same work as always, the kind no one noticed unless it failed. But today, the work felt different, because he wasn't alone. Irina didn't just walk beside him. She inhabited the space now. Her eyes scanned each duct line with practiced memory. Her fingers brushed rusted metal, checking for softness. She didn't ask for permission. She belonged here. At the third node, she reached the junction before he did. "This one's bleeding pressure," she said, tapping the lower weld. "You can hear it if you crouch." He did. She was right. Jaylen logged the reading. Irina rerouted the insulation tags, recalibrating the flow with silent efficiency. It wasn't helping. It was participating. It was something else. They moved in sync now. At the next sector, 2 admin techs walked past them carrying sealed crates. One of them glanced over, saw Irina, saw her walking in regulation gear beside a logistics auditor. His eyes narrowed. Jaylen saw the flicker of recognition, the wrinkle of the nose, then nothing. No comment, no step back. Just a moment. Irina didn't stop walking, but her hands curled slightly, her jaw set. Jaylen noticed. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm not used to being seen without being insulted," she said. "Maybe you're not the one who should be ashamed," he answered. She didn't reply, but the tension in her shoulders changed. Not gone, just processed. They stopped under a shattered communications tower. The base was buried beneath layers of warped plating. Jaylen needed to reach the node behind the access wall, but the relay map was half erased from corrosion. He crouched anyway, grumbling under his breath. Which one of these was blue casing again? He muttered. Irina stepped forward. Fiber wrap, right? She said. He looked up. Yeah, she pointed. There, lower left. See the bend in the insulation? They marked it back when Tier 9 still had live coolant flow. Old system, but reliable. Jaylen blinked. You remember all that? She shrugged. It was my job. I was good at it. He didn't speak. He just handed her the scanner. She took it. No pause, no hesitation. Her fingers moved like they never forgot. Like the time she lost hadn't erased anything, only buried it under skin that people refused to get close enough to understand. Jaylen crouched beside her. They worked together, and for the first time, he was the one learning. After another hour, they pulled back from the final panel, gloves damp, arms sore. Irina leaned against the wall beside him, her breath visible in the cold. The wind had shifted, lighter now, the rain easing. Jaylen sat down on a steel ledge and looked out across the southern stretch of the colony. Crumbling buildings, power lines sagging, water collecting in shimmering puddles. But beyond that, distant light. A generator hum. Life. They said it would always come back, Irina said quietly. He turned to her. The scent, she added. No matter how many times I scrubbed, how long I steamed, it would fade, then return, stronger. It made people panic, made them angry. But not now, he said. Not yet, she replied. But it's always in the back of my head, the waiting, wondering when it'll happen again. Jaylen leaned forward, arms on his knees. If it does, he said, we'll deal with it. She looked at him then, really looked, longer than before. Not evaluating, not bracing, just watching. Then she sat beside him. Their shoulders touched, their legs too. Not an accident, not subtle. Jaylen didn't move. Neither did she. When they finally returned to the flat, the room was quiet, dry. Irina walked in first, stripped off her jacket, and unbraided her hair in one practiced motion. Jaylen hung his gear, wiped down his tablet, then paused. She was already by the heater, adjusting the vent angle. He watched her for a moment before he spoke. You didn't have to help today. I know, she said. But you did. She turned slightly. You trusted me to. That night, she didn't reach for the floor. She sat on the edge of the cot, same as before, but closer this time. When he stepped out of the fresher, she was already under the blanket, eyes open, watching the ceiling. He stood still for a moment, then said softly, I'll take the floor. She turned her head. You can lie beside me, she said, but not closer than this. She held up her hand, palm open, showing a space, a single hand width. Jaylen nodded. He lay down beside her. No contact, no crossing lines, just presence. And for the first time, that distance wasn't about fear. It was about trust, shared, controlled. And it was enough, for now. The rain didn't return for 3 days. That was rare in Zero and Terra. Normally, the colony's artificial atmosphere cycled through mist and storm like a damaged heartbeat. Never steady, never predictable. But for 3 days, the skies held, heavy with cloud but dry, as if the world itself had paused to watch something quietly unfold within the rusted skeleton of Block D7. Inside Unit 9C, the silence changed. Not the kind of silence that held tension or fear. Not the brittle quiet of strangers forced to coexist. This was a softer kind. Shared silence, the kind that filled spaces without pressing on them. The kind that hummed gently between two people who had nothing to prove and no need to perform. Jaylen logged his corrosion reports each morning, his tablet balanced against his thigh as he leaned back on the sleeping platform. The heater vent beside him buzzed faintly. Warm air filtering through the patch arena had resealed with salvaged foam strips and repurposed thermal tape. Arena moved like she'd always belonged. She didn't ask anymore. She didn't wait to be invited. She folded laundry without being prompted. She replaced the water filters when the diagnostics pinged low flow. She stitched Jaylen's frayed jacket cuff at night, thread looping silently in her hands, her fingers careful, methodical. He watched her more than he meant to. She never called it out. Not once. But she always seemed to know. On the fourth morning, he returned from a walk in Sector 9 with cold wind biting at his face and moisture readings barely stable. His gloves were damp, his shoulders stiff. He entered the flat expecting silence. But Arena was singing, softly, almost beneath her breath. A low hum layered beneath a half-remembered melody. It stopped the second she saw him, her posture tightening, mouth clamping shut like she'd been caught doing something forbidden. Jaylen didn't speak. He just smiled. Later that night, after the dishes were cleaned and the heater coils hummed a steady rhythm, they sat on the floor with two cracked ceramic cups between them, her blend of steeped roots and synthetic herb, the kind that smelled like soil and mint. Arena tucked one leg beneath her and wrapped the blanket over her shoulders, watching him from across the table. "I used to hum when I worked the lines," she said. "Not to calm down, just to keep time. The sound helped me stay focused." Jaylen nodded. "You can keep doing it if you want." She watched him carefully. "You don't think it's strange?" "It's yours," he said. "That makes it good." She looked down, brushing her fingers along the lip of the cup. Then quietly, "It feels good to be noticed and not evaluated." Jaylen's throat tightened. He reached forward slowly, not touching her, just placing his hand palm down near hers on the table. She didn't move, but her eyes flicked to the space between them. "I don't know what I'm becoming here," she said, "but it's not what I was." He nodded once. "You're not returning to something. You're building it again. From scratch. That's harder. That's stronger." That night, she didn't ask permission to lie beside him. She just did. She climbed into the sleeping platform slowly, adjusted the blanket, and pressed her body gently along his side. Not demanding, not shy, just present. Her hand rested on his chest. His arm curled beneath her head. There were no words, but something between them had shifted again. When he woke the next morning, she was already up. She stood by the window, hair down, combing it slowly with the same cracked brush she had rinsed clean days ago. Her shirt was different. She'd taken one of his older ones, cut it, re-sewn it into a better fit. Her skin caught the early gray light, silver marbling along her shoulders, glinting softly. Jaylen sat up, watching her in silence. Arena turned. "You're staring." He didn't deny it. "I'm still not used to seeing you stand still," he said. She walked over, sat beside him. Their thighs touched. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I used to think stillness was failure," she said. "Now, it feels like something I earned." Jaylen didn't move. "You did," he said. Later that morning, as he laced his boots and checked his tablet for updates, Arena stood near the door, arms folded. He looked up. "You want to come?" he asked. "I want to do more than follow," she said. He nodded slowly. "Then let's make it official." She tilted her head. "Official?" He handed her his spare tag, a secondary data badge used to track environmental readings. You scan. I log. We move together. Irina held the tag between her fingers, then clipped it to her belt. That day they walked openly, through populated stretches of the colony, past vendor posts and data clerks and civilian workers. People looked, but no one said anything. Irina kept her head high. Jaylen walked beside her, not shielding her, not explaining her, just being with her. The looks faded, the stares turned into glances, and the world moved on. But they didn't. They kept walking, step by step, together. The following morning, the sky cracked, not with rain but with light, pale blue, thin, as if the colony's fractured dome had finally remembered how to let something through. It wasn't sunlight. Zero and Terra didn't get that anymore. But it was close, enough to make people glance upward instead of down. Inside Unit 9C, Irina stood by the window in silence. She wore the same repurposed gray shirt, now paired with a belt she'd fitted snug around her waist. Her arms were bare, pale violet skin marked with healed burns and silver tracing. Her hair, damp from the morning rinse, hung neatly over one shoulder. The heater hummed behind her. The air was dry. Jaylen watched from the table. 2 cups sat between them, one steaming, one cooling. Neither spoke yet. Irina finally broke the stillness. I want to make something here, she said, not just survive it. Jaylen nodded. Then let's build it. And so they did. Over the next week, the rhythm became architecture. She repaired the duct lining in the hallway using her old glacial core techniques. He taught her how to log and transmit pressure reports without triggering false flags in the colony's failing mainframe. Together, they restructured the platform bed using scavenged insulation boards layered with clean foam and folded fabric. They didn't talk about the future, they lived it. Irina still didn't sleep deeply. Some nights, Jaylen would wake to find her sitting up, listening, not for danger, but for silence that stayed too long. Her hand would rest against his chest, fingers brushing faintly over his shirt like she was checking for presence, not reassurance. And he let her, because presence was what mattered. One afternoon, a call came through, a flagged alert, code 87, unstable compound registered in Zone 3, biohazard detected, manual confirmation required. Jaylen frowned. That wasn't his zone, but the attached file had his credentials listed. Then he saw the tag, Irina's name, and her old file. Case reference, Subject A, former glacial worker. Pheromone volatility. Risk level, high. Status, unresolved. Jaylen's throat tightened. They had found her. Not her location, yet. But her scent pattern had registered again somewhere in the outer systems. Someone had triggered the old algorithm, a system that should have been shut down years ago. He looked across the room. Irina sat by the heater, cleaning a cracked ceramic plate, unaware. Jaylen opened the file's back end, overrode the alert, flagged it as false positive due to outdated calibration. Then he did something more dangerous. He changed her status. From Subject A to Engineer, non-critical staff, logged, archived, removed from biohazard watch list. He closed the terminal and breathed. Later that night, Irina crawled into bed beside him. Slower, closer. He was already lying down, arms behind his head. She leaned in, pressed her lips gently to his jaw. I want to be touched tonight, she said. Jaylen turned, eyes meeting hers. All the way? He asked softly. She nodded, but not like I'm still broken. He sat up slowly, reached for her cheek. You're not. Irina's breath caught. Then she stood, pulled off her shirt. Nothing beneath. Her scars glowed softly under the dim heater light, silver threads across her hips and ribs like cracked starlight. Jaylen followed her movement with awe, not hunger. He removed his own shirt, sat still. She stepped closer, climbed into bed. They lay down, their bodies touching at last. Not hurried, not rough, just real. Her hands slid under his shirt. His lips found her collarbone. She guided him. Not with force, but with choice. Every movement deliberate, every breath shared. When he entered her, it wasn't conquest. It was communion. She didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She moved. With him. And when she finally whispered, "I feel like I exist again," he didn't say anything. He just held her. And that was everything. The next morning, Irina woke before him. She sat by the window again, watching the outside world. Jaylen stirred. She turned. "I think I'm ready," she said. "For what?" "To be seen," she said. "Not watched, not judged. Seen." He stood, walked over, wrapped his arms around her from behind. "You always were," he whispered. Outside, Zero and Terra was waking up. Vendors shouted beneath fractured archways. Children ran through puddles. Data workers checked portable terminals near hydro nodes. Jaylen and Irina stepped out together. They passed two officers. One looked at Irina. Nose twitched. But he didn't flinch. He didn't speak. She didn't flinch either. She stood taller. Jaylen held her hand. When they reached the outer wall near Sector 4, she let go only to help him lift a busted maintenance panel. "Want to fix this one together?" he asked. "No," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "I want to fix all of them," she said. "I'm done hiding from who I used to be." Jaylen grinned. And for the first time in that entire colony, someone who had been forgotten by everyone, the smell girl, was now walking open-faced through the wind, through the silence, through the ghosts of who she used to be. Not a subject, not a victim, just Irina, whole and healing whole. And